Well, good evening, my friends. I missed you so much last Friday, but let me just tell you that I was down in Escalante, Utah, having a much needed break and the time of my life. I want to show a few pictures from my adventures with my friend Adrian. This was amazing. And if you ever get a chance to travel to Utah, then you will understand what I mean. It was almost a religious experience because we have some of the most diverse and spectacular scenery in the world. And so here I am with the birthday girl. There she is, Adrian. She talked me into going down there. Really had to pull my arm. And we stayed in the most beautiful tiny home. There were 7 of them in a row. We can't wait to go back. It was beautiful, beautiful. And then we went through the petrified forest and we could see all of these beautiful things. I just, geeked out. But there was always, of course, one little alien thing here in the coffee shop. Gotta love that. No matter where I go, there I am in front of an alien, but it was hysterical. The people in Escalante were incredible. When we drove into Escalante, which I was not prepared for, we took Scenic Highway 12. And both Adrian and I are afraid of heights. And we came up upon this, and it is 2 lanes. There are no guardrails, and it is 1,000 feet down on both sides. And so I have a video of us, and maybe I'll play that at some point in time. But I mean, I'm just like, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. It's like we were both completely petrified and focused on just making it past what we were going through. But it was absolutely exquisite. I'm so glad that we did it, and I can't wait to go back. Of course, I had lots of conversations with people that were in the area, and there was a wonderful woman that I met, and I actually videotaped an interview with her because she grew up in Roswell, New Mexico. She's a jewelry designer, and she has a little coffee shop there. I love her jewelry, and I will be playing that. It is so much fun to travel to these small places and just pick people's brains, and then to hear, okay, here's a great place where we've got all this wonderful tourism. How are they generating revenue? Is it on creating false narratives, or is it on actually promoting the wonderful scenery, the wonderful history of the area? I don't know. It was so much fun. So I can't wait to share that with you. And then I also want to just take a moment to thank my partners, Barry Greenwood and Jack Brewer, for doing such a great job at expandingfrontiersresearch.org. Jack just published 2 days ago a new blog post entitled FOIA Appeal Reveals More on 1982 Nazi Investigations. U.S. General Accounting Office sought FBI help in search for Nazi war criminals in American agencies' projects. So if you have not checked that out, go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org and check it out. And I will say that the article that we put out a couple weeks ago was on October 20th, actually. Uinta County paid tens of thousands to Phenomicon speakers, has gotten a lot of views. It will continue to do so because we are continuing to look into this matter and see where our taxpayer money is going. For me, being a Utah native, this obviously is important to me, especially because I have a small business here, especially because I saw the way that the COVID funding was potentially misused by certain people. And there was, as I've mentioned before on previous shows, there were some reports put forward by local media about the misappropriation of funding when it came to COVID relief funds in the Uinta Basin. So this is going to be an ongoing story. I look forward to digging into this. And again, at the end of the day, for Expanding Frontiers Research, our goal is to promote the truth. It is to expose people to something outside of the world of ufology, because for those of us who have a passion about UFOs, we get into this And we often don't realize these subtle nuances or the ways that other people can potentially manipulate us as individuals or manipulate taxpayers, manipulate, the political mindset of our country. And I think that there are lots of things we need to be aware of. I wish it was a plain and simple thing, but it is not. And that is what we are trying to show with Expanding Frontiers research.org. So you can go check it out, join our list. I hope you do. And so now we're going to bring in somebody that I haven't spoken with for a long time, Robert Kiviat, and welcome to the show.
Well, I'm great to be here,
I
Erica.
know, I'm so excited. And so you're a writer, you're a producer, you're a director. You've done so much in the entertainment community over the years. And you were one of the people that was really responsible for kind of, shining a light on a certain alien autopsy. So tell us a little bit about that for people that are watching this show for the first time and don't really have an understanding of the importance of alien autopsy.
Well, the way it looks for history's sake, I was a journalist really in college, was motivated by my professors to take journalism as a career. After a little segue through the advertising industry, for simple financial reasons and all, I woke up one day and said, this is not for me. And I embarked on basically taking my passion, which was as a journalist, what evidence is there that UFOs exist? What evidence is there that ghosts exist? What evidence is there that JFK was killed by more than one gunman? I mean, a lot of these things kind of resonate with conspiracy theory, Erica, but in reality, I never looked at this as conspiracy. Sure, if you had more than one person shooting the president of the United States and we think only one guy did it, well, that's a conspiracy, two people. If the United States government got involved in a coup d'etat and took out our president, my God, that's definitely a conspiracy. But to say that UFOs are a conspiracy would say that the government knows it, they have a body, their research, they have the body parts, they have the DNA or whatever level of DNA it has, or whatever. If there's an alien body or an alien creature, then I want to know about it. So I stayed away from Roswell like nobody's business. To me, when I got involved in the early 90s, Roswell was not that big a deal. To me, it was like, okay, I took a year to just go around the country and meet all the researchers I could possibly meet, especially about UFOs. The way I felt that like a New Yorker. I'm a New Yorker always at heart. I live in California, but I'm a New Yorker. And as a New Yorker, you say, come on, cut the BS. What's real? What's not? Let's get to it. If you read the book by Berlitz and Bill Moore, the Roswell incident years ago, it's filled with all kinds of maybes and suppositions and blah, 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 blah. I was like, you know what? There's nothing there I can look at with Roswell. However, in 92, there was a great researcher by the name of Bob Exler. He passed on, unfortunately. But Bob was the kind of guy that he got right in the middle of this mystery. He said, I want to meet the guys at the CIA who would know. I want to meet the guys who would know in the aerospace industry. He was a former NASA mission specialist. And as far as I was concerned, there's a guy we can deal with. Okay. So Bob was great. I embarked on a TV career while I was still in New York, early 90s, dates me a little bit. And I said, as a young producer in the field, I said, what can we do with this? There was a show coming on the air, I found out, called Now It Can Be Told. It was hosted by Geraldo Rivera. I figured that was my in because I had I met somebody, ironically. I was giving a lecture about the face on Mars at a bookstore. And literally speaking, some guy goes, I know Geraldo Rivera very well. My wife is his talk show, when he had an old talk show years ago, producer. So he said, you need to go meet these people. Now, I just wrote an Omni magazine was a magazine that had a lot of great scientific fact coverage. They were into fantasy, great glossy magazine,
Right.
the old kind of really great thick paper, and you could, on some of it anyway, where you could really get good color saturation on the cover, especially so I really wanted to write for them. I'm lucky as a writer. I mean, first query letter to the magazine, first, yes, we want to do it. And it becomes the actual cover article in 1994, in August of 94, an Omni magazine, Face on Mars. Actually, they had a graphic done by this great guy I got to know years later through my dad, but I don't want to name him right now. He was helping to get the magazine covered right, and he was really pushing the cover for me as a cover article. And they did a great graphic of an astronaut looking at his watch kind of thing, and his wife and kid, which is really interesting now based on the Apple Watch and all that, right? And in the back, you see a pyramid on Mars, and you get the feeling. And they wrote Mars Face, New Insights, right? So inside the magazine is my cover article, and in the same edition is an article about Ron Pandolfi at the CIA talking to Bruce Maccabee, a top optical physicist, one of the best UFO researchers. I had seen a documentary at college, and I went, "That's the guy, Bruce Maccabee." And Bruce Maccabee and I became friendly. And Bob Exler was helpful there because they both worked on the Gulf Breeze case. And so eventually I kind of brought it all together, Erica. I wrote my first big article. I started working with Geraldo Rivera, doing some really cool stories. We were one of the first people ever. This one-year news magazine. It was like hard copy, Inside Edition. Inside Edition still on. It was like Inside Edition is the same as it was back then. We were just like Inside Edition. But Geraldo Rivera would come out and say, "Tonight we're going to Area 51." So I was able to get our crew to shoot down into the base at Area 51 before anybody else got that. And we were asked by actually NBC News, could they buy our footage? And we were like, I don't know why they said no. They said no. But Geraldo's brother, Craig, who went and did the shoot, he came back and went, "Bob, I don't believe you sent me there. The Wackanet people were all over us. We couldn't get it." But we did get great video. And Bob Exler was one of the interviews we did. And Bob said to me, "Bob, Bob to Bob, I really think I got another story I want to tell you about." I said, "What is that?" "I just got a tape. I don't want to tell you what it is. I'm going to send you the tape." He sent me a tape, and it's what became known as the Guardian UFO landing tape in Canada. That was going to be my next big story for Geraldo after Area 51. Unfortunately, we got canceled. I had a friend I met at Unsolved Mysteries on the phone on NBC. I called this girl up. I said, "Hey, you guys wanted me to come over. I got my stuff, got on a plane. They picked me up right away. They hired me, and they loved this story because it was a great story. The Guardian UFO case is one of the best cases ever shown on television. I'm proud of it. It predated the Alien Autopsy, but that's my lead into you to let you know that unless there's great evidence, we brought this videotape as part of the Unsolved Mysteries broadcast. We broke it at Unsolved Mysteries. The highest rated Unsolved Mysteries broadcast, I believe, ever, based on what the Daily Variety said. 1 out of 4 televisions, 1 out of 4 TVs were on this in America. It's a 25 share in households.
Wow.
Robert Stack came out and went, "This tape right here," Robert Stack, and that, Cody used to wear and all that. Robert Stack holds a tape up and says, "This tape might prove whatever, UFOs are real." But on the tape was a thumbprint. Someone named Guardian put the thumbprint on this tape like in ink. And that's a great clue, right? So no one's broken this case beyond what I did at the beginning. I did a version of it on one of my Fox specials after Alien Autopsy. But I mention this all because I want you to get the bracket of what's going on here. I'm just looking at the evidence. I'm looking at what's real, what's not. Sure enough, I end up starting my own production company after Unsolved Mysteries. I met with the Fox Network, and they said, "What are you working on?" And I said, "I'm working on an entire series of my own. Do you guys want to get together?" They said, "You know what? We got a show called Encounters on right now." And I said, "I know, I saw that pilot of yours." And they actually ripped off the Alien Autopsy. Bob Exler is a fair guy. He gave us the exclusive. He went off and gave them their version of the story. It became a pilot episode called Encounters, built around the Guardian video. The same video. One video launched 1,000 ships at Unsolved Mysteries. The same video launches a series called Encounters. And I knew about that because I was feeling a little bit like, I can't believe that Bob Exler would do that, run right over there. But that's fair. That's fair. Unsolved.
It's
Didn't want to pay him enough money. But I'm
so
just like,
let me just ask you really quickly because I've got people
sure,
in
sure.
chat that are saying that they worked with Bob and that they feel he was like a snake oil salesman.
They're out of
And
their mind. They have no clue what they're talking about. Bob was one of the best researchers there is. He did a Gulf Breeze, Florida photographic analysis in front of people. Anybody who wants to say that, come talk to me. Okay. When people say that about Bob Exler, it offends me. Here's a guy who's made no money. I mean, I had one guy recently tell me that I'm dealing with that said he made some money on that case. He made next to nothing doing this stuff. Nothing. Talk about a snake oil salesman not selling anything. He wasn't making any money. Bob was working only on sheer passion. Now, did he think maybe if he proved aliens are real, there might be a windfall there? Maybe. But Eric, I know you came into the UFO field a little bit more recently than some other people. Let me tell you something right now. If you want the inside track of the UFO phenomena, unfortunately, you're talking to the guy. Did I ever get paid millions of dollars? No. Did I get paid just enough to come back to these specials at Fox Network? Yes. But let's talk about Alien Autopsy. So Alien Autopsy comes along in this way. I'm doing now, I became one of the producers at Encounters because Fox kind of forced me in there. They kind of said, if Bob, the guy at Fox was named Bob Bain. Bob Bain says to me, hey, Bob Kiviat, if you go help Encounters, your credible kind of journalistic kind of stuff you do, then we will thank you for that. And we'll give you a little bit of, you get some money for it, but we're really going to thank you for that. I said, great. I said, maybe I'll make a good friendship with this guy. For a year, I helped Encounters make it to 16 episodes somehow. I'm not saying everything was great, but I tried my best to keep it credible. I did my best in my part. They're wrapping up the show. They're closing down the boxes. It's done. 16 episodes. We're out. We're done. Not unsolved mysteries. Not being around forever. And I get a phone call. Hey, Bob, did you hear about this scene in England right now where there's a talk show basically happening? And the talk show has a guy named Reg Presley, a musical guy from the Trogs, whatever band, from the 60s or whatever. He went on a talk show and said he saw an alien autopsy from Roswell. He saw a tape of it. I was like, what? So I called my Omni magazine people I knew back in New York. And I said, have you heard about this at all? And they said, yeah, they did, in fact. And they wanted to know what I knew. And I said, well, because we're kind of like together. We work together. I called Steven Spielberg's office. Amblin wouldn't talk to me. Amblin was like, if we were involved in anything, we wouldn't tell you anything. Well, ironically, Omni Magazine did get Spielberg's people, because I guess a magazine, they were willing to talk to them. They wouldn't talk to me. I was an independent producer at this point, right? And they said, no, we're not part of that at all. But it bothered me because the name Spielberg was floating around and it was like, what's going on with this, right? So then I get another call from another investigator who says, Bob, I'm telling you, there is a piece of footage. You got to hear about it. Call this guy, Colin Andrews. He'll know all about it. I said, I know Colin. He was basically a guy that was dealing with crop circles. Great. I'll call him. I call him. He says, Bob, I've seen it. It's a dark scene. You got a body laying on a table. You got sheets over the body. Got the alien head with the eyes and everything. And it looks like it could be real. I said, well, sounds like a dark scene. What does that mean? Who's doing an autopsy in a dark scene? I don't know. It looks weird. You may want to call the guy who got the footage. I'll hook you up with him. His name is Ray Santilli. I go, okay. I call Ray up, send faxes back. He's making it all mysterious. I've got this. I've got that. I've got Harry Truman walking around. I said, Ray, stop. If you've got a real autopsy, that doesn't sound like an autopsy. He says, Bob, if you come to London, I promise you, I will show you the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And I checked your background. You worked at Fox. You worked at NBC. You're our guy. Come out. And I said, okay. I said, tell you what, I can't come. Why don't you come to me? Okay. And he planned a trip to come in April of 95 to Hollywood to show us the tape. He didn't come. I'm like, what's wrong with you? I made meetings. 7 networks are waiting. Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC, everybody, because they had an internet swirl going by now. It was the early days of the internet, and they were swirling around with Alien Autopsy and everything. Hard Copy called me up and said, can we talk? I said, I'm not even sure yet about this. Stop, right? I haven't even seen the footage yet, right? So Ray says, now, Bob, we're setting up for May. Come to Museum of London. We're going to take care of you. We'll get you hooked up. We'll put you in a nice place to stay. Whatever. I made my own trip. I don't want any favors. I came to see him. I come to his office, and he pops in this tape. And it's not a dark scene. It's not like that at all. It's this whole autopsy with the body being cut open and the brain and all that. I was shocked. I was like, Ray, you got to be kidding me. I mean, if you had this, why didn't you tell me? He goes, well, I'm going to show everyone tomorrow at this big screening, but you have first shot. You're going to be in the front row. Okay. So I come in there. There's actually a scene in a movie called Alien Autopsy where they try to emulate this in a British movie that came out years later. And I'm supposedly in this somewhere. It's ridiculous. But I definitely was sitting there when they played it in front of, 200 people. Everybody was a bit shocked. He puts the lights on. And after it's all over, they take me out to this bar to talk to me some more about trying to make a deal with me. And I'll bring it to Hollywood and everything. And they introduced me to the investor. And the investor's name is Volker Spielberg.
Oh, Lord, have
I'm
mercy.
like, you got to be kidding me.
No,
You
wow.
got to be kidding. And he walks up to me and he says, I am the investor in this film. Speaking perfect English. I go, Volker, really? You're walking around the entire screening like you don't speak English. All of a sudden, you got a girl on each arm, and you're swashbuckling up to me here, and now you're coming out to me. Great to meet you. And he says right away, are you Jewish? And I say, yeah, I happen to be Jewish. Actually, no, my little chai over here, right? So I'm Jewish, but I also lean a little bit Christian too. I'm interested in Jesus a lot. So I've done shows about miracles, prophecies for Fox Network. So come on, I'm really into this as well. So, but I said, why did you ask me that? And he's a German right away. So I'm like, come on. He says, Bob, let me tell you something. There's a better chance the alien autopsy that you just saw is real than there were 6 million Jews killed in the Holocaust. I went, time out. Time. Ray Santilli, get over here. And I pull Ray aside and I go, Ray, you need to keep him away from everything you're doing. Because even if he's joking, he's not funny.
Wow.
Right? If he's a denier of the Holocaust, that's not going to help you sell this film. And Ray was like, whatever, Bob, it has nothing to do with me. I know, whatever. So I take the film back. It's a video. It's not a film. But you remember now the dark scene we were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
The dark scene is part of the collection. There are 3 films I'm going to be buying. If I buy 3 films and bring them to Hollywood, or buy them and bring them, whatever you want to call, it's 3 films. One is a dark scene. There's the dark scene. He showed it to me at the meetings, right? He did not show the other 2 films at that big screening. But when I drilled down onto him later, show me the whole package. So he shows me the whole package. The package appears to be this dark scene where it looks like a dummy laying on a table. It did not look real to me. Okay. I was like, Ray, if that's what you're selling, I don't know what to tell you. He goes, Bob, that's the scene that we're told by that military cameraman. That's the early retrieval of the alien. Okay. They're prepping him for travel, I guess. Right. Yeah. And then it doesn't look like the other one. So now we got a problem. And the third film was like a military guy in khakis spinning around some I-beams and what appeared to be like 6-fingered, like hand-printed dashboard material from the craft. And I'm like, look, Ray, I can bring this back to Hollywood, but you're coming with me, okay? I'm not going to show this footage to anybody without you explaining it. He eventually allowed a guy named Gary Shoefield to bring it. And Gary comes to meetings with a sales guy named Chris Carey. And they start coming to all these meetings. I go to Fox, CBS, ABC, NBC, United Paramount Network, and everybody's interested. But Fox goes, we love it. Fox had the X-Files on, right? So to them, this was like the ultimate X-File. And it became an X-File 2-part episode, by the way. And not only that, they threw my name into another one. So the funny thing is, Chris Carter and I at the X-Files always had a bit of a problem after this because my show was big enough to rival him a little bit. But Alien Autopsy, the show itself, happened when all the other networks were interested. Mike Darnell at Fox, he really saw this. He got it. He says, Bob, look, you're a journalist. Either it's real or it's not. We know the Noah's Ark hoax a couple of years ago. We never let that happen. I said, I told your president that. I told John Matoyan that, the president. Not on my watch. There'll be no Noah's Ark nightmare on our network, which means we research it, Erica, better than anyone else. I mean, anyone else. The New York Times, you name it. I grew up on 3 newspapers as a kid: Newsday, New York Times, New York Post, every day. I'm an avid newspaper reader. That's made me a better journalist, I believe, and a writer. I respect newspapers, but I knew they did not know enough to even cover this, as we found out by the New York Times later, and we'll get to that. So I knew I could cover it better than anyone. It's my baby. I'll cover this like no one. And I did. We had a tough trouble, though, on this one. The guy was going to sell, Santilli, individual territories. We got the North American rights. Fox paid only me enough money, barely, to make the show and pay him for the North American rights.
Right.
We were able to put it out in North America, but every other country he sold the raw footage to made their own documentaries. So he said, everyone's got to be on August 28th. We all got to be on August 28th. Otherwise, there'll be exclusives lost. So everyone's got to come out at the same time. That was in every contract. So we all had to be on the air at the same time. The Daily News did a big spread in New York about me, whatever. I misspelled my name with an R in there, Kiviat. It was ridiculous. But they showed me, and they showed this worldwide thing, and they said, we were going to try to show whether it's real or not. We called it Alien Autopsy, fact or fiction, exclamation. Maybe it should have been exclamation point and question mark. Okay? That's what our job was, fact or fiction. But we had to do it in 5 weeks. 5 weeks of an analysis and on the air. So we created the show like that. We don't know. We said to the public, we don't know for sure. We're going to tell you what we know, and then we'll tell you more as much as we know it. And I had my host, Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek. When he read my words, believe me, every emphasis was made until we know more. This is what we know. You have to decide for yourself. So anyone who says Alien Autopsy was a hoax, they didn't watch the show. We never said it's real. We never. But the late Stan Winston, special effects guy, he thought it was so amazing, he'd hire the guy like that. The Cyril Wecht from the JFK assassination, autopsy guy, amazing guy. He thought it looked real. A guy named C.L. Milroy, a top pathologist, he thought it was real.
What about Kit Green? What about Kit Green?
We'll get to him in a minute, okay? Kit Green will come up, I promise you, no later than 5 minutes from now. What happened was, and by the way, those that don't know Kit Green, allegedly the former head of what they call the weird desk at the CIA that would know all about these things and whatever. We'll get to him later. There's no doubt that at this point in the story, we only showed the bright scene. We didn't show the dark scene called the tent footage. We didn't show the guy throwing around metal parts and spinning around metal parts like a military guy. We didn't do that because Fox asked me, please, Bob, do not put, let's say it like it is. They ordered me to not put the other footage in first. Let's let the public see this thing. It was such a hit. It was such a big thing that a week later, the president of Fox goes, you can show the brain now. You don't have to worry about the brain being shown. It's okay. Everybody wants to see more of this. So we did all that. And then I think what happened was we basically just threw everything in. We showed as much as we could in all the other shows we did. We showed the brain. We actually digitized the area of the crotch because it looked a little female. It didn't look male, that's for sure. And it might have looked female. So we covered that area up. Then it was almost like, you could show that, but I don't think we ever did that. So the reality is we showed 3 shows eventually over about 4 months, 3 different shows Time magazine wrote about it and said, autopsy or frautopsy. It said, they compared us to the Zabruta film. They said it was like, it stirred the liveliest debate of any home movie since the Zabruta film, the JFK assassination film. And I was like, maybe Sarah Wecht inspired that. I don't know. But my job, I told Fox after it was over, we will be the ones to get to the bottom of it. I promised the president of Fox that. I told Entertainment Tonight that. I told whoever where I went that would happen. But they didn't want to go back to it for a while. So then I did a show called Miracles and Visions, Fact or Fiction, hosted by Roma Downey. Again, fact or fiction.
Actually, interesting. You mentioned Roma Downey. I used to teach her Pilates back in the day.
Really? So Roma came out. She hosted a great show called Miracles and Visions, Fact or Fiction. We went against CBS's announcement of the R.J. Reynolds announcing they were going to be like, admitting they screwed up the country with cigarettes and killed people and everything. That guy was coming on 60 Minutes. We're going on like an Easter show against them. We still got like 10, 12 million viewers. Roma did a great job. We were showing all evidence of possible supernatural miracles occurring. And to this day, fascinating show. Anybody wants to see it, let me know. Miracles and Visions, Fact or Fiction. They liked the ending so much. We were talking about Revelation and the book of Revelation and the Old Testament and New Testament and prophecies coming true around the year 2000. So they said, can we do a show just about prophecies? I said, great. Edward James Olmos comes out, my actor friend. He basically hosts my show. I didn't know him well, but he came in. He hosted the show, Prophecies of the Millennium. Now we start hearing things. Barbara Walters is going to be breaking the Alien Autopsy hoax. Really? Fox calls me up. Bob, what is going on? I said, Mike, I told you. No one knows more than we know. They don't have anything. I trust me. They've got nothing. I'm all over this story like nobody's business. Don't worry. Sure enough, Barbara Walters starts announcing on 2020, tune in Thursday night, Alien Autopsy, learn about the truth. They brought on this guy, Steve Johnson, who's a special effects guy, who says, we interviewed him for our show. He added nothing. We had Stan Winston. No offense, he's not Stan Winston. He said to me, I can make one, Bob. I can make one. I was like, great. Well, we'll get back. So he told ABC he could make one. So he made an alien, and he goes, look at my alien. It's better than their alien. See, there's his fake. They're both fake. I don't know what he's trying to say. So that didn't cause any problems. But then Fox said, you know what? You want to do a show called World's Greatest Hoaxes, right? You want to expose Billy Meyer. You want to expose certain cases. You have to do that, Erica. You can't let things just hang there. This old expression, 95% of everything is fake and 5%. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to snap, okay? There's more like 99.9999% of stuff is bullshit, okay? Let's be clear about that, okay? Because when you say this is an alien craft, Lou Elizondo, I can tell you, I don't believe they're from here. Was he an actor? Who trained this guy? But CNN buys it left to hook, line, and sinker. Now the New York Times comes out just a few days ago. Hey, you know what? Those videos are really nothing. Don't worry about it. They're not. We know what they are. They're not alien. We well know what they are. Could be Chinese. Could be junk. Could be drones. Believe me, they know more. They got this guy Graves running around, this young pilot, telling everybody, I was in this plane and I've seen squares and circles and all this stuff. Really? Why aren't you still in the military? You're a young guy. How are you out already? Well, don't worry. You'll be learning about him soon. David Fravor. Who are these people? So, Erica, let's get fully around this now. You understand?
Yeah.
Alien Autopsy was just a film, a video, an
Right.
interesting case. Doesn't mean that I am perpetrating a fraud. Let me tell you who's perpetrating a fraud. Mellon, Elizondo, Tom DeLong, stock scheme, a Regulation A+ stock scheme overreach, according to a woman in Ohio who happens to be a congresswoman named Beatty. So Congresswoman Beatty goes public in 2019 on the House floor, and she says, this rock bet guy starting a company to look at UFOs and interspace travel is a Regulation A+ stock scheme, and it's her favorite example. And she had many, but this was her favorite example to change the stock procurement of our country. Regulation A+ schemes means you could do anything. You could almost claim anything and raise money.
Mm, and so what do you, I mean, how does that translate to crypto now?
I never touched crypto in my. I know people
Hmm.
doing good things with crypto and bad things with crypto. I have no idea how crypto even relates to any of this. As far as I'm concerned,
Well,
what
you
I
would think it
see is
wouldn't, but
I see a scam, classic Wall Street scam that they're taking advantage of middle America. They're taking advantage of people that don't know better. Tom DeLonge is out there emailing me and everybody else on his little site, on his little feed. You have one more day to invest. Hurry up. Invest in what? A show like Unidentified, which is unairable in my opinion. It's so filled with wrongness now. A couple of years later, if History Channel ever re-airs Unidentified 1 and 2, they should be brought up in front of the FCC. Like, you're putting a fraud out there again.
and
There are
so let me just ask you, because that brings up a good question. So if you've got a show, where do you go if you are saying that this show is factual
I
and
love it.
I
I
mean,
love it. Great question. Guess what? We're screwed. Our world has become so uncensored with any kind of veracity. Years ago, you want to read about something. You go to a library, Erica. In the library are books that have to be vetted and fact checked. And publishers are very concerned about being accused of being bad in their content. When you get into the internet and you get into this now streaming world where there's no gatekeeper at all. I had a recent conversation with someone who, we could talk about him tonight if you want. And he says to me, Bob, I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have any boss. Yeah? What are your credentials that you have such a great acumen of content checking that you don't have no one checking you at all? Well, if you go watch a show that I'll mention tonight, if you want, and you want to pay for it, I'll help this guy make some more money. Watch it. And you tell me it's a case that has absolutely zero credibility, zero in the country that it happened in. And someone comes out and goes, oh my God, it's a great case. I don't know. Might be real, might not be real, but check it out. But they make because they hire a narrator with a decent history. He was in the movie E.T. Go figure out what I'm talking about. I'm not going to be negative, but I really believe that you asked a great question. How do you get factual information about UFOs? How do you get factual information about any mystery these days?
well,
Good luck.
yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a complete clown show, and we know that since the beginning of the topic in the late 40s, there really haven't been a lot of people who've actually cared about ethical standards, and I think that's unfortunate. That's why this subject is where it is right now,
Oh no,
because
it's
people
worse than that,
don't
Erica.
have it's absolutely,
No, it's worse.
yeah, and so, but I
It's
want to
worse.
ask you though, if you are on a TV show on a major network, and you are going out there and you are claiming that there are non-ionizing levels of radiation that are potentially killing people, and that is following them home, what responsibility does the network have? What responsibility does the producers of the show? Because in my opinion, this is, where do we blur the lines of
If you
actually saying,
if you're yeah,
plausible deniability? I mean,
if you're Gary Nolan and you're claiming Gary Nolan, let's get right into it here. Let's not pussyfoot around here, okay? If you're Gary Nolan and you're hanging out with Kit Green and you're trying to tell people, well, Kit's telling people recently, the alien autopsy, I thought it was real. I think it's real. And then he tries to take it back. All that's coming through the Bob Bigelow flow of disinformation from the Skinwalker Ranch days and Harry Reid. I heard a guy recently brag on a news show. I interviewed Harry Reid. Harry Reid, God rest. Look, I know he's not here with us anymore, and I never want to say anything bad about someone who has died. Harry Reid admits in a book put out by this guy, Lukaski and George Knapp, he bamboozled the government. He admits, ass swap wasn't real and an A-tip wasn't real. All we wanted to do was get money from the government and study Skinwalker Ranch. They say it like flat out. That's a scam. The New York Times blew it. They let Leslie Kean come in and just dazzle them with a bunch of Oh, I spoke to pilots and I spoke to generals. And you know what? Bottom line, Ralph Blumenthal, I'm calling you out, dude. Ralph, you should have kept them in line. Cooper, you should have kept them in line. Leslie Keene, formerly with Bud Hopkins in New York. You don't want to get into the Bud Hopkins, Linda Curtil story, I guess. Maybe you don't want to. I mean, there are people that have scammed the world with the UFO subject that you have to be so careful. Now, people say, well, why would you wear Alien Autopsy? Fascinating that somebody tried to put that off on people. As long as you're willing to stay on the story and bring it to an end, it's worthy of that. But if not, if you're Lou Elizondo going, I'm telling you, there are going to be many more tapes coming out very shortly. And please invest in my company with Tom DeLonge. Are you kidding me?
Well,
How can the New York Times be so blind and
that was a
stupid?
strange experience. Like, just for that whole New York Times dropped the ball on that
Unbelievable.
one.
And by the way, your question is, there is no place that you can trust your information with these subjects, because very few serious journalists like me take it seriously. People come around and go, I'm a documentarian. I've done three shows in my life all about UFOs. And they all happen to be very similar. And I'm like, what does that make you? Just because you can stick something into the midst of our pandemic and people at home and they're kind of not going anywhere and they happen to watch more Amazon and whatever, so you make more money. But the credibility factor is always there. And if you don't have credibility, what do you got? Just because you can sell, like you mentioned earlier, someone says Bob Exler is a snake oil salesman. Bob Exler, compared to these people in this order: Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, Tom DeLonge, whatever order, Harry Reid, Mellon, of all people, does Mellon of the Mellon family need the money? What is he doing in this entire thing?
Well, I mean, granted, he could be, I mean, he obviously is a melon, but you never know what's going on behind the scenes. And is he there? I mean,
wait till you see the movie. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a big documentary probably in 2023. We have a great company behind us on this one. We believe it's going to come out. We hope 23. And there's going to be a previous documentary to that, prior to that, on the most amazing mystery going around, which really is not related to UFOs directly, but there is some connection, about the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is the raging mystery around the world right now. Our actual timeline of history has been altered. Something has happened. Names of products, TV shows, scenes in movies, body parts in our body, land masses where they are. Our world has changed, and the residual evidence we're going to show in this documentary I'm making now is going to show you evidence that at one time, like for instance, Sally Field, famous actress, right? I remember as Sally Fields from The Flying Nun, I'm in my 50s, right? Flying Nun, Gidget. And then she goes to the Academy Awards and she wins. And she says, you like me. You really, really like me. Good luck. You know what she says now when you watch the video? You like me right now. You like me. And she looks weird. Well, when you go back and check it out, all the parodies about Sally Fields saying that throughout her history, not one person ever says, you like me right now. Everybody says, you like me. You really, really like me. So something happened. That Academy Award performance doesn't exist in our world right now. Her brother works at CERN, where they're doing particle collisions and trying to affect the universe and maybe by accident affect the universe. You know what happened with Stephen Hawking? Stephen Hawking claimed that the biggest problem we have before he died was CERN. He was worried that CERN was going to change the fabric of our reality. He wasn't sure what was going to happen. Well, the Mandela effect might be caused by a lot of things, but we're going to get into this heavily in a documentary. Right after that, we're planning on doing a show called Ufolotics. And you're going to meet for the first time Ron Pandolfi, the guy that people have been talking about forever. And he is, by the way, a much more normal, thoughtful guy than you would have ever imagined. And I have the pleasure and I would say more than pleasure, I have the duty really to do a good job here with him. And we had a little bit of a little row. Uh, your Utah location is very interesting because we've been talking a lot about Utah lately, Ron and I. And the present head of Skinwalker Ranch. And
And so
we'll
what's up
get
with
into
that?
that.
I mean, what does Pandolfi think about Skinwalker Ranch?
He's been watching it all these years, just like I have. And he knows well that what you have is Hal Putoff and Kit Green, his former, basically Ron more or less came in after Kit left the CIA. I'll let Ron speak about his relationship with Kit Green. I don't want to be the one to be discussing that. That's not my place. But if all goes well, and Ron and I can get this, and he can do the interview, it'll be like Ufolitics, the man who briefed a president speaks. The only person that you can find in the government that I'm aware of, and you want to show me otherwise, going back to 1940, whatever, I don't care. Go wherever you want to go. The only person from the CIA's science division that's ever given a briefing to a president of the United States or been asked by the president and his team, science team, for a briefing on UFOs is Ron. Period.
And so what does he say since you've had these conversations? Because, you know, you always look at, I mean, he's right there with Kit Green and Hal Putoff. I mean, it's
He's
like,
not right. No, 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 no,
but
no.
I
He's
mean,
not.
every time you look stuff up, I mean, it's like, well,
That's the
Pandolfi said
world we
all
right. The
this is
world
blah, blah,
right.
blah.
The world we live in of armchair journalists. I'm being kind, by the way. Journalism is like something you wake up one day, Eric, and you go like, "I'm a journalist." Guess what? You go to college, you study
Right.
writing, you study investigation skills, you graduate with a degree, you look for a job, you're a journalist. The internet, everybody's a journalist. Everybody's as good as the other.
Right,
Like
but why would he allow so much stuff to be put out
that
about
is,
him?
we'll ask you, you will get the answer. By the way, let me make sure I don't speak for Ron, and by no means am I promoting Ron right now. But I'm telling you that because I had to work my way through a fraud involving Joe Firmage that was started by Hal Putoff initially. Kit Green and Hal Putoff were the ones who got Joe Firmage all excited about this anti-gravity stuff in Utah. The present owner of Skinwalker Ranch wanted to be hanging out with Joe on this anti-gravity stuff. So he learned about the government guy named Hal Putoff. Hal Putoff is not really a government guy. He's like a guy the government will turn to for possible consultation. But when he consulted on the psychic warfare stuff, it was found to be bullshit, complete bullshit. The psychic warfare stuff is covered in a movie called The Men Who Stare at Goats with
Mhm.
George Clooney. Go watch it. So that same guy, Hal Putoff, who uses all these illustrious, scientific, papery kind of stuff, his main goal is to tap into bank accounts, tap into government coffers, get into the government funding. And it's a high time the government issue of being usurped by these people is called out and called out for what it is. And it has nothing to do necessarily with UFOs. However, if UFOs are considered to be an aerospace mystery, which it is, most of the UFOs that we've seen, most of the UFOs I've aired on many of my shows, probably are some kind of special technology built by humans.
Right.
Probably most. However, we don't know. But how much of it, we don't know. But aerospace is mixed in, and so is secrecy. So that's another issue.
Absolutely. And so let me go back to where, you know, you mentioned Putoff and you mentioned Kit Green. So let's talk about the gyroscope. Let's talk about where that whole thing first emerged. You know, I mean, whatever
Let me
we've
tell
got
you,
going
okay.
on.
So I don't want to give away your politics. It's going to be its own show. But I can tell you this. How creatively, apparently, as I'm going to make sure people find out, got Joe some parts, we'll call them parts, to
It
build with. And
from
he put these together. And they were not gyros exactly, more than they were gyroscopic in a theory, but they were nothing more than like bicycle parts.
and where did he get those parts?
apparently from Hal. And so Joe's been trying so hard to piece this together. But what I find so interesting is Ron has to keep an eye on some of this because he knows that people in the China secret, spying agencies, Russian, they like to study UFO researchers and people like Joe into anti-gravity and stuff because they keep an eye on it to see what they may be able to pick up. And then if you're a CIA person, you may be looking at them because they're like the fly attracts, or whatever, the light attracts the
Something.
fly. So a lot of that's, and I'm not speaking for Ron. I'll let him do that. I hope I'm not doing any of that tonight, but I do think it's important for people to know that he has been calling out these videos for 3.5 years privately to me, and he was 100% correct. Literally, the New York Times confirms everything he knew from 3.5 years ago.
Right, right. But I want to go back though, because I think this is really important. Like the whole, where did Putoff, where did Fugel, where did Firmage, how did all of that come into play? What year was that? And
all right, so here we go, because it's a Utah story. I'll base it in Utah.
Okay.
In 2010, just about, Hal Putoff and Kit Green come out, and they stand in front of a plane owned by the individual you mentioned, which I'm going to be nice because this guy is very worried about what I'm going to say about him. He is very upset that I found out he bought Skinwalker Ranch with the help of Hal Putoff, directly through the help of Hal Putoff, by the way. He only met Hal Putoff through Joe Firmage in the first place. Then he tries to bury Joe Firmage. Look, Joe may be a guy way out there. Joe may be a guy who was a multimillionaire who lost all his money. And Joe may be a guy who might be not everybody's cup of tea, but no one deserves to be bamboozled and taken advantage of by Hal and Kit. Nobody, okay? They come out, they try to convince Joe and his partner that they got good insights to this technology, to quote Kit on this video. He's standing in front, we're going to show this in the documentary. He's standing in front of a plane. A reporter's interview, and Hal Putoff is saying, with Kit standing right there, this is very important technology, very important, very great. And then Kit Green says, it's very, very, he used the word, it's very interesting. It's fragile technology in more ways than one. It's fragile in its own, we're developing it. And it's fragile because the way you tell the public, I'm paraphrasing it. Kit was pretty good on camera, actually. But that was used as a sales tool to raise money for bicycle parts being spun around. Now, the next thing you know, Joe is losing, I guess, a little bit of his equilibrium, and things aren't going right, and whatever. He's maybe getting involved when he shouldn't be. And they're trying to bury him and throw him out of his own company. And while they try to throw him out of his own company, they write a paper.
And so who is they? Kit Green and Hal Putoff?
One more name.
Brandon Fugel.
I didn't say it.
Okay.
And he says, most recently, I'm going to destroy you. Why is he so angry, this guy? Why is he so angry that I was able, as a journalist, it's like Roman numeral number 1 in Harvard Outline of Journalism, stay on the story. I'm just staying on the story. I find out the same guy that Joe brought into this whole world of phenomena and the government and Hal Putoff, whether he's respected or not. Kit Green did work at the CIA. So through Joe, said person meets all these people. Then he buries the guy. I'm done with him. I got all I need from him. Joe's a jerk. And I'm now the man at Skinwalker Ranch. Really? Skinwalker Ranch, by the way, is so unproven. There's a guy from the New York Post named Steve Greenstreet doing a very good job right now of assessing the Utah story you're looking at. So I give Steve a shout out. Steve was a Utah Mormon. He is I believe still, but I don't know. I think he might be evolving a little differently. And he's getting into this story and he's learning all the things that I know for 4 years, Ron and I have been talking about. And there's Steve Greenstreet trying to figure out why he was bamboozled, how he got sucked into this whole Elizondo nonsense. I mean, if anybody needs to be called out for what they are, it's Mellon, especially. He should know better. The guy was in the government. Come on. If you had a government job at some point, don't you have a little bit more ethics involved here. So whether or not anyone else is called out on this publicly, this guy Mellon should be. And by the way, he's the guy who got up at the first press conference before they ever had any videos out there and points to a picture of a Mylar balloon
Well, that was
above him
awkward. I
and goes,
mean,
"Here's a U." It's so comical, Erica.
it is
I,
comical, and I wanna go
I,
back, though, because to me, I mean, I want to this is important because you're talking about Firmage and,
oh
you know, I
yeah,
mean, I grew up in Utah. I'm from Utah. I have a lot of business connections. I have a lot of political connections. I have a lot of, you know, I've done my family is well known.
I bet. Yeah, Utah.
And so it, you know, you can, you know, it's a small place. And I mean, Firmage, when he came onto the scene, I mean, a kid. He was a kid with brilliant ideas. And
No doubt.
he didn't know how to manage business. And so his mother, you know, Gloria, managed a lot of that for him. And I could see through some of the holdings that I have, specific papers and contracts, where he was approached by some of the big people in the UFO world. He was taken for a ride. People
Do
came
you
and
know that?
said,
But why don't you say
funding,
this?
funding, funding. We, Joe Firmage, we want that funding. And so, I mean, he gladly did that
But
for
listen,
a time.
people may not be hearing what you're saying. I want to make sure they get it, Erica. Here's a guy who was actually very rich, made millionaires of many people with his US web company,
Right,
which, whether or not it was the greatest internet website consulting firm ever, it was one of the first.
right,
And you've got to give credit for being there first. Whatever the company was or was not, he reached a very high level of success. There are people right now that are so ungrateful to this guy. I've talked to many of these people because I worked with Joe for a short time until I found out he wasn't getting any funding to pay me my contract. But I was trying to figure out, as like an embedded journalist, what's going on here. But what you said is very important. Before Joe ever got involved and left US Web and got in this whole UFO field, people noticed he was a mark. They came to him
right,
and they asked for money. And these people are all the people you know,
right.
the Greers and all that. This is getting to the point now where people need to know, in the show You Politics, the 30 or 40-year saga here, separating the real UFO, truly a great mystery, from the bullshit of people making money, taking advantage of people. I watched a recently documentary on HBO Max called, it's about the Heaven's Gate cult. Do you know the kind of total irresponsibility that was created by remote viewing and bad UFO reporting on the Art Bell show by a guy named Courtney Brown, who
And
went out there and these people partly killed themselves at that time with
well,
the
and
Hale-Bopp
right,
comet
right,
coming because of that show and those people.
right,
Now, when you deal with murder and suicide, and let's face it, Applewhite was a murderer. He wanted to commit suicide and take his flock with him. That's what he did. And the people that propagated that mystery, the Hale-Bopp comet with a UFO following the Hale-Bopp comet, people should watch. If people are really interested in UFO classifieds kind of stuff, watch the Heaven's Gate documentary. And it's not the best show ever made, but watch it for its veracity of journalistic truth. And if you think UFOs are just a mystery to have fun with, let me tell you something. It's a religion to a lot of people.
right. No, it's dangerous. It is
Gotta be
absolutely
careful.
dangerous. And I
Absolutely.
think, you know, when you look at, for me, like knowing a little bit about Firmage and seeing that he was just a young kid. He was a young kid that had a lot of money too quickly. And there were these people that came in and, you know, I mean, I can think of people from MUFON, heads of MUFON that came in and asked him for a lot of money. And I don't think he was, I don't think he is a bad person, but I think it's really sad that a handful of people, namely people involved with a certain ranch, have done nothing but
I
create
couldn't
these
agree more.
stories, you know, about this man who was, you know, potentially going through a lot of personal
Mhm.
trauma and things. And I just, you know, I've always, when I've looked at a certain person that owns a certain ranch or says he owns a certain ranch because somebody else might own it, just anyway, I'm not going to go there, but
Well,
you know,
no,
you,
I want to say something that's very important.
yeah.
We are going to give Joe the opportunity in the show, Politics. It's going to be mostly about Ron and his relationship with Bruce Maccabee, a top Navy optical physicist, and how that article years ago that was in the same edition I had the cover article on. It was like the article that lost 1,000 ships as a journalist for me. Ron was getting briefings from Bruce about UFOs at the CIA informally. And that gave Bruce the opportunity to bring Ron some really interesting cases. Ron's going to go through those cases, I believe, with me, and we're going to talk about what is possibly what could be true and what not. But you're talking to someone who knows stuff. He's a scientist. He was dealing with Ronald Reagan. This is not a joke. People who treat UFOs for their own proclivities, like an Elizondo who comes out of nowhere. I've been working on this stuff for 30 years. I'm a pretty young guy still, but let me tell you right now, that offends me. And people that do bad reporting, like cases like the Brazil, I mean, I'm trying to be nice, but they're making money, Erica. If you knew how much money
Oh yeah,
people are
of
making.
course. But I want to go back though, because to me this is important, and I want to really highlight this. So where did 2010? You've got this, Hal Puthoff, Fugel, all of these people coming in and trying to sell this
Oh, they're
idea.
bringing people in. They're bringing people into Salt
So
Lake
what
City.
type of people were they bringing in? Like Dan Marriott, where did he come in?
Well, Dan, I have a, I have a, what's the word? I have a legal agreement with Dan that I'm not going to be talking about Dan too much. Look, Dan's a nice guy. Dan Marriott, former congressman, very nice guy. Again, usurped and manipulated by these people, in my opinion.
So Wesley Clark.
Usurped and manipulated by, let's say who Wesley, the head of NATO in Europe, gave Joe Firmage and his partner credibility to these technologies. Why, in my wildest imagination, a guy like him, Wesley Clark, would be interested in Joe Firmage and this machine? It boggles my mind. I would love to ask Wesley Clark that question. I would. And by the way, none of that means that Joe necessarily didn't believe that he really had an anti-gravity machine in development here. He might have actually believed it. But the other people, did Wesley Clark believe that? Did Al Puthoff really believe that? Did Kit Green really believe that? Brett, the guy who was a partner might have believed it, may have told his friends and family, but after he found out it was not really anything more than just a experimental whatever, not going to prove anything, not lead to anything, he trashed the guy. Why would you trash Joe Firmage? So Joe Firmage gets so trashed, he doesn't operate for a while. 2016, he comes out and he wants to restart the research again. And that's how I kind of got into it. So those years you're talking about in Salt Lake City, people were with Hal Puthoff and Kit Green beating the drum of credibility. They're bringing people in for investment. Now, look, the way I look
at what
at
about Carl Sagan's widow?
Ann Jurian? Apparently, Joe told me that what was their relationship exactly? I guess Joe, I don't know who gave who money in that one. I'm a little confused, but there was indeed a relationship between Carl Sagan's wife, widow, and there was some relationship there. But Joe was a player. Don't forget, he had millions of dollars he was giving away to people in the UFO community. I'd love to see what they generated for that money. I would love to do it, and we will in Politics. They better get ready. When my producers start calling, get ready. We want to know, where's your, what?
Bernie Haish.
Say that name again?
So Bernard Haish, he was,
I'm not sure I know that name.
So yeah, so when
you got me there. Is that a Utah thing?
No, but when I was involved in, it was very interesting back in 2017 and things. I was introduced to people that were allegedly they'd had issues with Firmage, and I was introduced to his former secretary and specific things, and it was very interesting. The big agenda, in my opinion, was to protect a certain person who is very visible right now. And so no matter where you go, what conversation you're in, if you're going to talk about this person or this person is speaking, the most important thing that they are presenting is the fact that he was bamboozled out of millions of dollars, but he couldn't say anything because he didn't want his family, specifically his ex-wife, to know. And so to me, that is really, really interesting, especially,
Hmm.
when you've got somebody like Firmage who could potentially be like a fall guy in this. Maybe is he great? Is he good? I don't know. But
I can
he
I
is.
can I can give you a general view of it. I mean, I'm not going to say I have all the answers, but I was very embedded in this thing, and I can say by being embedded, and I think Joe knew, being a journalist for television and shows I've done and documentaries I've done and whatever work I've written, that I could be a eyes and ears looking into everything, which I was. And when he finally realized I was adopting my journalistic skills to this job, he called the communications or studio guy. He feels that Hal Puthoff ripped off the name to the Stars Academy. Joe had a company called the International Academy of Arts and Sciences. That was being kicked around for a while. Joe has a very good point. If Hal Puthoff had anything to do with the name of To the Stars Academy, then Joe would be right that Hal Puthoff probably usurped Joe's creativity with the name of that. Where Hal Puthoff comes into this whole thing is so fascinating. When people find out, it's going to be interesting because Hal has been sort of the gatekeeper of nonsense between the UFO, psychic phenomena people, and tapping into money every chance he gets. So if money becomes the focus, you have to wonder where people's integrity is. You have to wonder where they're coming from.
Well, absolutely. He's been behind, I mean, since the 70s, early 70s, and then you've got his alleged connections with Sidney Gottlieb, Mr. MK Ultra, and it's like, okay, I mean, so what the same core group of people have been behind promoting
Yeah,
crap.
Kit Green and Hal Puthoff have a lot to do with this, and they have a lot of in the old Lucy show. They have a lot of splaining to do, and I hope they do it on my camera. I hope they're willing to realize that if Ron's coming on, they better speak.
I mean, it's so. I mean, what do you think of their shenanigans? I mean,
I think it's
Serpo,
horrible.
MJ12. I mean,
I
it's
think
it's
it's horrible. What you're dealing with are people that saw an opportunity to take advantage of a true mystery. From the day the Roswell 1947 headline went out, we've got a crash saucer, whatever, and then they retracted it. Right there's a big mystery in our country. Whatever is added to the UFO mystery through 1947 is all good grist for the mill. But when people come in with a clear agenda to either take money out of government coffers, like Bob Bigelow, and people usurp their relationship with Harry Reid and vice versa, and then you use that relationship to build more money grabbing, it smells real bad, Erica.
Well, I mean, it doesn't it to me. It's the more I learn and the more I watch specific places and people. It's just there are good people who have had experiences. I mean,
Right?
and it's like to me, this is what drives me. I think the most. It's the fact that this deserves to be studied seriously,
Exactly.
and
And
this
if you,
never has been ever.
how
And
could it be? How could it be? Imagine if you're sitting there and you want to do. I heard recently Avi Loeb is doing something at Harvard where they're going to have some kind of like cameras everywhere and what sounds
right, and
great.
they're promoting crypto, and then every time you see him
Whatever.
speak,
Time out. God bless Ari Loeb and Harvard. If I hear one more person use Harvard as a credible institution that you should just really bow down and go, oh, you went to Harvard. I have a son going to school in Boston, not too far from Harvard. I would respect that school more than Harvard based on what I know about the people that came into our culture with Harvard education and use that education to bamboozle and take advantage and use the stock market. If you go to Harvard, it doesn't make you more ethical. It might make you a little sharper or you're sharp to begin with. And you use that. I think there should be a study of people that went to Harvard and the good they've done for society and the bad they've done to society. And they've used that and give Harvard the proper place in our society where it belongs. Middle of the road. It's a middle of the road situation. It's some good, some bad, like any other institution whether you had to get a 400 or 1400 SAT score before it was ended or not. It doesn't make a difference. Ethics, Erica, where are the ethics of our world? Where are they now?
Well, I don't think there are any in the UFO world. And I think it is really interesting because you see people coming in that are claiming to have all of these credentials in the military or credentials in the aerospace community or credentials, here or there. And one of the biggest things that I have to stress is do your research. Don't
Exactly.
assume because anybody in this subject is saying, well, I did this, A, B, C, and D. Well, 99% of them are full of it.
Can I ask you a question? How many people do you think do this, especially during the pandemic? I want to buy this movie about whatever. I'm going to pay my $3.99. But let me go do a Google search and see what it says about that subject. Oh, it's a hoax. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Or I did a couple of searches. It might be a hoax, maybe it isn't, but if the preponderance of information coming from the internet before you click on that looks like it's probably a joke and a fraud, but who's giving people that direction? You see, there isn't any direction. People want whatever information feels good to them these days. They want their private news. If you're a conservative, whatever, or you're a Trumper, you like Fox News. You're not going to watch CNN. I don't want to watch that. CNN, same thing. We live in a culture where you just go to the news that resonates with you. And if that news resonates with you, wonderful. I miss the days when a guy like, even Dan Rather. Dan
Oh,
Rather,
yeah.
Dan Rather went on a real what should we call it? The lecture circuit, okay? When there was a fraud years ago about Noah's Ark. Okay? He made it clear to people very clearly that if you are going to put a story out about Noah's Ark being found, you got to remember that at 7 o'clock you're watching Dan Rather on the news. At 8 o'clock comes that show. The average American back then in the early 90s, they were like, is that a news show? Is that a documentary? What is that? So it makes you have to be much more of a good consumer. And Dan Rather was like, people better realize. And we as a network should be more careful. And I believe that's really important. You've got to be careful when you disseminate that people are going to see something as news when it's not news. And I believe that's a big problem in our culture. I
What
believe it's
absolutely is, and I think one of the things that I try to stress on, when I'm doing my show is the fact that it's been shocking to me to see these social media groups popping up, and it's like they're just using these key phrases, and then oh my gosh, all of a sudden somebody who's had a sighting near Skinwalker Ranch, all of these people are glomming into this group, and guess what? They're collecting your data, and guess what? They're going to be manipulating you to think A, B, C, and D. This is going on all over the world. This is going on, and not just in the UFO space. And so we need to be really careful about where we're going to put our information. We need to be careful about where we're going, to find answers for things. You got to fact check and then fact check again and again, because this is really serious, and we're
I
seeing
agree.
a huge crisis all over the globe because of this disinformation that is being put forward by different countries, by different groups that have a lot of money, and they're doing people's bidding. So it's really an interesting time. But
Can I ask you a question though? You've done UFO classified here for how long now? How long have you been on?
oh my lord, I think I've done my show for 7, 8 years.
Okay. So when you saw this comedy appear with Mellon, Elizondo, somebody named Jim Simivan, and nobody knows who the heck this guy is. This guy came out of nowhere. He's giving, by the way, this is a guy who literally wants to go on in Sedona, Arizona, those little missions to take your flashlight and communicate with UFOs and stuff. Takes his wife out there. This is a guy who claims his wife was abducted in the house and was bleeding, and then saw the really, and you were in the CIA, and you believe that's happened to you. So I ask people like Ron, no one knows who this guy is. Nobody knows who he is. And he's out there going, Jim Simivan, CIA. Let me tell you something. Anybody could say they're in the CIA. The CIA is not going to say he's not. They're not going to go around going, he's not. They're not going to do that. So they have usurped. They usurp every level of, in my opinion, the thing you were just saying before, which I love what you said. We got to be a much better society consumer-wise. We've got threats of nuclear war from
Right.
Putin right now. Are you kidding me? You know, we're at a point in our culture right now. We better wake up, because if we're not careful, we're going to have information bias at such a point. We're not going to know if missiles are on the way. We're not going to know.
Right.
We're not going to know whatever's going on. You know, it's a nightmare. I really believe it.
Well, no, I mean, absolutely. And I think that that's, for me in the UFO space and culture, it's just been like it. I just have kind of sat back and there, like I said, there's so many good people who've had incredible experiences. I mean, we're all trying to do this, I would think, together and to move in a direction that is positive. But then you get these people that are really nefarious. Bigelow, who has clear political, political agenda, and is not ever going to release data because he doesn't have anything.
He
Because
has no data. He has a piece of property where there's like ancient history in the Utah basin, as you talked about, where allegedly people felt ghosts and they saw monsters. They saw.
right,
Show me one piece of evidence from Skinwalker Ranch worthy of a 1-hour documentary, like I've made many on UFOs. And let me tell you right now, it is a travesty that History Channel has propagated unidentified and Skinwalker on the same channel, and they should be held accountable for being a false history network. I don't care if they hear me now. I've been talking to them for 2 or 3 years about all the things the New York Times just released. Why did the New York Times take 3.5 years or more? How many now? 4.5 years to find out the obvious. Susan Goff at the Pentagon has been saying the same thing to me for 3.5 years.
right.
The believers wanted to go, they're not saying they're not alien. They're not saying anything. They barely knew what they were. These were
Right.
tapes coming out of left field somewhere that Elizondo manipulated with Mellon into the marketplace, and immediately got the New York Times to do a op-ed piece on the front page and how about clickbait? For the New York Times
Right.
to clickbait us into a ridiculous saga for 4.5 years that allows inferior documentaries to be put out, whether they're making money or not. They're inferior in their quality. They're inferior in their journalism. There's none. They're repeating old stories. This guy Corbell, who comes around trying to remake the George Knapp Library. How many documentaries were made about Bob Lazar before this other one, the new one? Not many, because nobody believed anything this guy's saying. Even Stanton Friedman was like for years telling me, Bob Kiviat, I really want this to be real. But just because we have his name on a document that looks like a phone book doesn't mean anything. When people find out where Bob Lazar really worked in my ufologic show, they're not going to believe it.
I mean, which place was this? The brothel? Was it the?
No, but this guy's not an idiot, okay? And he very much impressed Joe Rogan, and he very much
Well, that
impressed
doesn't
people.
take much.
Let me tell you something. He's no idiot. Let's give Bob Lazar a little bit of credit. However, the credibility that he worked at S4 of all, do you know that S4, Eric, is still radioactive over there right now? Still radioactive over at S4, okay? The other issue is, if you claim this kind of stuff, you better have some backup of some kind. No backup at all. In fact, like I said, he had apparently some job related to Los Alamos. Do you know what Los Alamos is? It's this behemoth, expansive. Many people work at Los Alamos. It's not like that means that they're studying UFOs at Los Alamos or Area 51. They're studying UFOs. This has become like the mythos of our culture. But that does not mean that there are some cases of UFOs, especially caught on tape, that people are going to see a revival of that from me, that they're shot by everyday people with their own cameras. And with all due respect to Steven Spielberg, who says, oh, I would have thought by now with a cell cam, we'd see all this evidence, but whatever. We don't know we don't know the mystery of UFOs as well as we would like. So we're not quite sure why, and I'll be the first to say it. You were getting much more on handheld VHS cameras and high-8 cameras and home cameras in the 90s into the 2000s than you're ever getting now with cell cams. Why that is, I don't know. You can't say that people are faking with the lower resolution cameras. They weren't faking anything. These are people. I have 40 or 50 cases I aired on Fox. The videos have never been solved. They are clearly unique shape craft moving in ways we can't explain, right angle turns in space. These are things we could be studying right now. But these pilots come out. This guy Graves, of all people, this young guy comes out. He's like the poster child now for the UAP movement because he's a former Navy pilot who says he saw all this stuff, but he's no more credible than good old David Fravor. David Fravor looks like the most evolution guy I've ever seen in my life. One minute he doesn't want to talk to anybody, and then he wants to talk to everybody and be on television, be a sidekick to Lou Elizondo on television. David Fravor's credibility will come into question also in the documentary. So you got to understand, whether you're Joe Rogan or anybody else, you might be being led down the primrose path, and you better be ready. You better be ready when people come out with real journalism and show you what the reality is.
Well, I don't think Joe Rogan was led down any primrose path
Yes,
because
he
he's
was.
always made so much money. He doesn't care.
Oh, when you sit there and you say, I always believed in Bob Lazar when I was a kid, and now I really believe. Great to meet you, Bob Lazar. What are you, a fandom guy?
Well, I mean, I will say, but I mean, he and Alex Jones and, the little BFF,
Wait, I like Joe. I wouldn't put Joe in that category. I think Joe does a decent show, but I think when you talk about UFOs, get the real people on. Get people who've been living and breathing it and doing shows and material about it for years, so there's objectivity. And there's a bit of history there. To bring on George Knapp to support the Bob Lazar story, a little bias maybe. So that's like the last person you want objectivity from. You want someone who doesn't have an axe to grind, doesn't have any interest in it. George's career was affected by it, also in a good way in some ways, and maybe some ways not. But I always respected George years ago. I always did. But I don't know where he's going right now. It looks to me like he's got a new sidekick, and they're going to just keep running out the same library of stuff he had years ago. And then George is going to speak very high. Come on. I have a show you can watch right now called UFOs Caught on Tape 1 for Fox. UFOs is the best evidence ever caught on tape. And there's young George, fantastic on Area 51. We're going to bring out, by the way, the first ever time, I believe, I'm working on it, he leaked that famous Area 51 video, the one that's flying around the base, and everyone and the base commanders are going, "What's that? Oh my God!" For the first time, people are going to meet that guy who leaked the footage. That's got to be one of the greatest pieces of UFO evidence ever. It makes like everything you're seeing right now look like a joke. This video shows this thing moving, changing shape from a UFO saucer shape to a clover shape. I worked on a show years ago with this researcher who comes in. She goes, I can solve it. We're starting to lose our minds in this stuff. But this show about the Area 51 video, it's like the video. Everyone was talking about that in the mid-90s. But the guy who actually leaked the footage, I believe we'll get him to come on. I'm trying really hard to get him. He was in silhouette in one of my shows. He's the only time he ever really came out. And when he comes out and talks about this, hopefully compared to these pilots and what they're talking about, it'll be a great show. I hope he does it. I got to motivate him.
That's amazing. And so I just want to go back to something you said earlier. So you like Alex Jones?
No, I think Alex Jones is a creep. But
okay, thank God. Okay, but I just wanted to
I don't want to
that because I was going to have to.
No, you were putting Joe Rogan in the same category. I wouldn't put
Joe Rogan and Alex Jones have been friends for a decade.
I know, and I saw the smoking, and he did it with Elon Musk too, and they may want to smoke a little, together. But let me tell you the truth. As my own kids, they're teenagers and went in college already. They like Joe because Joe talks like he's just like everybody. He's just trying to get there. So that's all cool. But the people that come on Joe's show, they have a responsibility to be upfront about their backgrounds, upfront about. I didn't hear George Knapp mention once the negative to Bob Lazar. Come on, be honest about it. Be honest.
Alex Jones, Joe Rogan has brought on people that are supporting white supremacy.
Oh, okay. I
need to say. I think
I only meant about UFOs and
phenomena. Yeah, no, I think as a whole, I think he's.
I'm deferring to Erica, Joe, on that one.
Yeah, no, I find Joe Rogan very offensive and obviously in.
But can I ask you a question about the UFO 7 years you've been involved, roughly?
Well,
Are you?
let me just go back and say that I've
Yeah.
been researching this since I was 7 years
Oh,
old.
I know you're back. I know that.
So,
But for the
yeah,
show
publicly,
itself,
I've been involved with this
right.
almost 10 years.
So for the show itself, and we have hopefully have some more time to really get into this. So did you know what happened around 2016? Did you sense what was happening? Did you get a feeling for it that we were moving into a kind of a different realm? People were, I'll tell you what I mean before you respond. People like Tom DeLonge were being revealed through the WikiLeaks release of John Podesta's emails, that Tom DeLonge wanted to go from rock music to becoming the next big UFO researcher on the planet. And he wanted to meet the military guys, and he wanted to do this and do that and all that great stuff. And then Hillary Clinton was being pounded by Donald Trump, and Hillary went on Jimmy Kimmel and went, Jimmy, you know, UFOs? No, the new nomenclature is UAP. And Jimmy goes, no, Hillary, I like UFOs better. Okay. So they were trying to, when I say they, combination of elements, they were trying to turn UFOs to another name. They were trying to move around this whole Hillary Clinton thing with Donald Trump. Hillary was telling certain people, I know a lobbyist named Steve, I think you probably know what I mean. I won't shout him out right now, but Steve, I will. Steve Bassett, very interesting guy, tried to do UFO lobbying. He was so sure that Hillary Clinton was going to get in and she was going to open up the UFO files, and then she didn't get in. And then Steve had to go find other ways to bring Washington into UFOs and everything else. And, give Steve a lot of credit. The guy tries hard. He actually needs help right now, I'm hearing. So Steve Bassett needs help. The guy is a very dedicated guy trying to get Washington and presidents and other people to take UFOs seriously. So give the guy credit.
But I mean, this has been going on since the 60s, 50s, late 40s. I mean, this is the same old. It's the same.
But let me finish. So 2016 happens. And then all of a sudden, the TTSA thing happens. And oh my God, they're going to release that. My God, it's going to be amazing. And what turns out to be is these very weak videos that almost, they've talking a lot lately about how not impactful they are. All of a sudden, the same people that were thinking the greatest videos ever are now saying, you know what, they are kind of grainy, it does look like a gimbal turning. Oh my God. This is where we were in 2017. But guys like Grant Cameron, very good UFO researcher about presidents for years, real documents, presidents that got letters, presidents that wrote notes about UFOs. He becomes fascinated with portals. Portals are the next thing. Portals have opened up everywhere. Maybe CERN, this particle collider in Switzerland, whatever. They opened up portals. There's a famous Wall Street Journal article, 2013, I think. They're turning on the CERN particle collider. Scientists say it could open up portals to hell and other crazy stuff. Well, I was mentioning earlier, this Mandela effect came in the same time. People were talking about portals opening up. The UFOs aren't coming from space anymore. It's all about the Jacques Vallée thing. They're coming from the dimensions.
Do you believe that?
Right.
Do you believe that?
Yeah. Who knows? But the point is, where they come from will always be a great part of the mystery unraveling, their point of origin. But for Jacques Vallée, for the last 30, 40 years, to be propagating this idea that, I don't know, they may come from another dimension. He doesn't have any clue. This is a guy who now is running around after years of going, it's all interdimensional, holding a piece of metal going, this piece of metal is going to... Hello? What happened to... It's all interdimensional and you're not going to see anything and it's not physical. I can't keep up with this guy.
At the end of the day, nobody's going to be able to see his work until 10 years after he's passed away.
What work?
So,
He's in Silicon Valley making money. What work? Jacques Vallée has two great claims to fame. He wrote books, okay, in the UFO area, by the way, and he was parodied a little bit by Truffaut in Close Encounters of a Third Kind.
Well, so they say.
And there's nothing about Truffaut's character in that movie. Nothing, even remotely connected to the research that he was doing at the time in the 70s and what he's doing now. These are the people that got to be called out for their illustrious titles and places they have in the UFO field. It's time for some eggs to be cracked. It's time. Enough already.
That would have been good 50 years ago. I mean, absolutely, this is ridiculous. And so, it's just
But
shocking.
nobody, but Erica, nobody likes to be a debunker. Debunkers do not sell.
But you know what,
People
though?
don't
I
want to
mean,
be.
it's not being a debunker. It's called, you want to talk about disclosure. Okay, the people that are promoting disclosure are the ones that are holding us from disclosure.
Well, I
This,
get I get no pleasure in
so
I get no pleasure in trying to set the record straight, but in setting the record straight, I have to call people out for their baloney. It doesn't give me any great pleasure, but it has to be done. It's like the work that needs to be done. It needs to be done. Not clickbait people. The New York Times should be ashamed of themselves. I don't want to make Donald Trump right, but when it comes to the New York Times, if you're judging their journalistic acumen by their black auras and whatever headline on the clickbait article they put out, because by the way, in the New York Times Sunday edition, you don't see a headline like that. So they knew better on the Sunday edition when it came out as an article. They knew never to put a headline like that out there. I'm calling them out. They should be correcting the record. We did a story back in 2017 that was wrong.
right,
How
I mean, where are the people that are looking into Leslie Keene's claims,
right here.
Elizondo,
Uh,
yada yada
Hello,
yada?
Erica, right here. And by the way, I did say these words. Debunking is not something that people find attractive. It's not something people want. But you know what? You got to take your medicine. If you believe in UFOs as a mystery like I do, like no one on the planet, no one's going to convince me there isn't a real mystery. That doesn't mean you have the right to milk it and remilk it and remilk it for your own financial gain, to regurgitate the same things over and over again and not get anywhere closer to the answer. That is not fair. That is completely bamboozling people.
Well, no, and I think not only that, I think it's to me to know that there are people, like I said, that have had experiences, whether they're genuine, whether they're misinformed, but people that are looking for the truth, people that could potentially have mental issues, people that are vulnerable, people that are suffering from
Exactly.
PTSD, people that are, going through all these things and they're trying to come to this little
So,
group
uh,
on
so
Facebook or Twitter. And
I'm
and then they get wrapped up with people like Kate Green and people like Brandon Fugel and people like all of these,
Well, let's talk about
these,
Jeremy. Let's talk about Jeremy a little bit. You seem
yeah.
to know Jeremy very well. You can mention his name if you want. I won't do that because I haven't met Jeremy yet, but I am seeking his involvement through a friend of mine and a coworker with me. Um, I think you probably know the guy Manny who did Who's Lou. He did a fantastic job unraveling the Lou Elizondo baloney of his life and career and whatever else you want to talk about. So Jerry McGowan, right? Here's a guy who has post-traumatic stress disorder, who knows he's being taken advantage of by the people that claimed they could build a truck that's going to go around the country. Lou Elizondo's involvement with Jerry McGowan, that needs to be made public. The people that were around him, maybe doing a documentary, another documentary of complete bullshit. I mean, you have to have integrity in this world, Erica. So what happened was he started telling people, as you know, I'm from Jeremy, that I don't know, one day Tom DeLonge may be going to jail. So why would Lou start talking like that? Lou needs to be called out and called in. And I'll tell you right now, I would not be surprised if someday criminal charges are coming to him eventually. I
And
would
so
not be
what type of criminal charges do you think would come?
fraud. When you make money, stocks, SEC, honesty, fraud. Yep, that's right.
And so what do you think, I mean, what are the motivations of, I mean, is it just they're grifting? Is it just they're making money?
Why
Is
is it,
there
why is it any different if you're Bernie Madoff and I'm going to an extreme here, and you're using false agenda, false everything, false documents to manipulate the stock market in some way or another for your clients and for yourself. What's different than a Regulation A plus stock scheme called TTSA? I mean, it's so ludicrous. If anybody invested in that company, they should have their head examined. First of all, the content coming from them, if you want to call unidentified a quality program, good luck to you. And it's an infomercial for TTSA. How could you allow a company to come to you and say, I'm making a show, I'm going to make it, and you're going to air it, and you're going to be happy with it? How about we're going to make a show analyzing you? About you, yes, but not by you. That's an infomercial for the stock scheme. You get it?
Yeah.
So if there was a good district attorney in New York and met Bob Kiviat after my politics documentary comes out, I'd be happy to meet you.
And there's so many great questions in chat, and I just want to thank all of you guys for bringing up wonderful questions. And so I want to go back a little bit to the beginning of the show when you were talking about the lawsuit, Firmage, all of it, Fugel. At what point in time was Brandon Fugel ever involved in that initial lawsuit?
Which lawsuit do you mean?
So tell us about
my lawsuit
Yes.
with them. Yeah. In 2017, when I heard about these portals maybe opening up and TTSA claiming they're going to get videos coming out, and before they ever came out, and Joe was going on the internet telling people on LinkedIn, especially, I'm starting up again. I got $8 million. I got the intelligence community behind me. It perked me up a little bit. So I contacted him. We started talking, and he says, look, Bob, TTSA is ripping me off. They took Hal Puthoff, my guy. He's faking kind of like what I do, which is I'm really trying to get into the science internet. Remember, his company is called INTERNASA, the International Academy of Arts and Sciences. It came out before TTSA ever were calling them. Joe's been banting that about for years. So I was very intrigued, and I said, so what are you going to do? Well, we're going to start up the research on this machine, and I'd like you to come in and be sort of my version. We're not going to be TTSA, but we are going to form a studio. I've always wanted to get more into communications, entertainment about these mysteries and about anti-gravity propulsion and future technologies. I said, look, Joe, it all sounds great. I know your background. I know you've been up and down the line. I know. Do you have the money to pay me? Because if I take time away from my TV career, it's going to hurt me if you can't pay me. Bob, I got money coming in. I promise you we're funded. You can tell your lawyer. We sign a contract. The contract calls for me to start on January 1st, 2018. I start. I'm working with Joe, trying to get his people clear on his technology. We're building it up to a moment we're going to unveil the machine. But the machine's not going anywhere. And I'm not getting my paycheck. And what's going on here? So he says he's talking to the CIA every day. And he's got a guy at the house living with him, he claims is a CIA operative. I'm like, come on. We don't know that, Joe. We don't know what the bottom line. Are you going to get your machine working? We're going to take it to DARPA. We're going to take it to DARPA in March. Now, if people don't know what DARPA is like the very, very high-tech government weapons. They make the technology, all the magic, they're working on all the magic technology, right? So Joe's praying that he's going to build a machine that's going to dazzle DARPA. By the time this was March or April, I was like, I wasn't getting paid. I couldn't believe it. My girlfriend at the time was like, these people are nuts. You need to get out. So basically I sued everyone that was part of this company that had more or less bamboozled me into thinking I should waste my time for 5 months. They owed me a big amount of money. And my lawyer, we sued. Now, in the lawsuit, the fellow I'm mentioning, Ron, and I got to know each other because I named him. And he made it very clear to me why he shouldn't be named. And I agreed with it. It took a while, a lot of back and forth, a little bit of legal, mostly me and him. And finally, he convinced me that Joe's version of events and the other people around them were completely all over the place. And Ron's version of events were correct. Joe was trying to milk people for money. Now, was it all to build a machine or to live on, to pay his bills? I don't know. He's trying to build a machine in his mind, I guess, but nothing's happening.
And so this was like in 2017, 18, like about
Yeah.
2010, though, what was happening with.
Oh, you want to? 2010 was a trial run for what I just told you.
Okay. And
Same
so,
story.
I mean, with Pandolfi, Pandolfi is such an interesting fellow. I'd love to talk to him, but I mean, he is married to a woman who claims she's an extraterrestrial, right?
This is going to be the hard part of our talk tonight. First of all, I want to mention again, not for my own promotional purposes, but it is important to note that the next documentary called The Mandela Effect, Fact or Fiction, will get into the issue of portals and what may be occurring with CERN and these changes in our society that are pretty dramatic, whether it be names of people in society, products, movie shows, movie scenes, all the touchstones of our culture, and much more. Regardless of that, there's a portal connection here that at the same time that Joe Firmage was building up his business again to make an anti-gravity machine, he was dropping Ron's name everywhere he could. Every conversation started with, Ron Pandolfi's behind me. I said, I know people who know Ron. I could call Ron tomorrow. Joe said, do not call Ron. Please don't, because that will blow our relationship, me and him. So he kind of ordered me, but he wasn't paying me anyway. But what I'm saying to you is Ron knows verse and chapter, and it will all come out in my documentary about what happened in 2010. Everything. What parts there were, where they came from, how Hal got them. There needs to be this revelation. I keep telling Hal, I've tried my best. Hal, it's better to come out now. The thing you did with Kitback with Joe and his partner in 2010, it's all going to come linked to TTSA through Skinwalker Ranch, through Bob Bigelow and Lukaski. It's a nightmare. This is becoming so difficult to separate 2010 from 2018 to where we are now. It's all linked together, Erica. It has a direct through line, and his name is Hal Putoff, and a little bit of Kit Green. Kit's kind of come in and out, but Hal's been there from day one.
I mean, and it is, I mean, and Pandolfi's right there. Pandolfi's, and if he is, hopefully he will come forward, like as you say during your documentary, because Pandolfi, I mean, he's right there. He's been playing.
I don't know, but see,
games forever.
Now that it's funny. Now that I got to know Ron, it's I can't always hear you say. If I step over you, I'm sorry.
No.
Ron, when you get to know him, it's not that mysterious. Okay, there may be things that he doesn't quite accept as UFO evidence of anything being alien, but he's not out there just shooting everything down automatically. He's not out there with a big sleight of his hand, everything's all BS. You have to have an intelligent conversation with him, and you'll find that out. So we'll see about the UFO reality through his prism. I'm sure he's willing to share his personal view of what's going on here. He did.
There is I think I've got an old magazine with a picture of Pandolfi, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Dan Smith. There were a couple other people sitting at a table in Europe when they were at a conference. And it's just like, wow, these guys have been in bed together promoting a lot of stuff for a long time. So
you have a picture of Ron in one of his, I know there's very few pictures of Ron around the UFO researchers, but you're telling me you have one that more or less is like that he's sitting there with researchers like the writer you mentioned. And
he's right there with Dan Smith and Rosemary Ellen Guiley.
Oh, wait,
Dan Smith.
Dan Smith is a very good story. Bob Exler, the same guy that I respected in the early 90s, had a relationship with Ron, knew Ron. Dan Smith has his history with his father in the Treasury Department for the Eisenhower administration. Dan Smith's family has a credible background. Dan Smith reached out to Bob Exler and said, can I meet Ron Pandolfi? Can you help me meet Ron Pandolfi? And Bob Exler was the go-between between Dan Smith and Bob Exler. That does not give Dan Smith any special place. Dan Smith talks for Ron on his own. Ron doesn't go, all right, Dan, here's what we're going to do. We're going to plant stuff into the UFO community, and you're going to do it for me. Dan would like to believe that. Dan has a problem mentally a little bit, and Ron will explain that. It's more of a like an illness, certified, and I don't know what that. I don't want to name it, so you have to give this guy a little bit of latitude. But guys like Grant Cameron that use it for fodder to talk about the magic secrets he knows and where Ron fits in and all that. Has he ever really talked to Ron? Has he ever really had conversations with him? Has he ever really asked about Ron's background? All right, so Ron's wife, I guess you're asking about.
Right.
The princess.
Aaliyah.
What do you think is going on with Aaliyah?
Well, I mean, from what you would see in a public sense, I mean, she is, I mean, there's, an alien connection. She's not of this world and yada, yada, yada.
Where did you pick that up? So
Okay, I mean, there's
I know where you got
the internet. I mean, that's just, you hear that all over the internet. So is that not true? She's not a space princess that was dropped off here. I mean, in their...
if Ron ends up watching this or is watching now, I think it's best for Ron to be the one in my show, definitely, to explain the juxtaposition between his wife, the alleged portal connections, and how early in his life he met her before. And all of that will be part of our show. And I'm not doing it to sell my show. I'm doing it as a courtesy to Ron, but I hope he's watching because I want Ron to recognize that in the UFO community, this needs to be resolved. Whether Grant Cameron did it because Dan Smith pushed it too far and got insane about it, or Grant Cameron bought it hook, line, and sinker, and people like, I don't want to hurt anybody's business here, but there's somebody out there selling tours to portal locations in the UFO community and taking them to Mount Shasta and taking them to South America and all about portals. And Dan Smith has been really pumping that. I don't know what to make of what he's saying, and I think it's something that people need to hear directly from Ron.
And so you don't think that Ron has been in bed with these people decade after decade?
But hold on. To be fair, and I think it would be less, I would be disingenuous if I said, I'm very curious why there's this connection being made between portals, his wife, and Ron. And are portals actually opening up? I asked Ron directly just recently on a phone call. He says, Bob, look, scientifically, we could talk about this, what a portal might be, but there is no evidence right now there's any portals opening up in the world that we're aware of, which, by the way, I'm doing the show on the Mandela effect, which talks about CERN a little bit. So I'm a little bit curious about all this. I don't just like whatever Ron says. By the way, let's be clear. We all know when you're in the CIA, and you were in the CIA, and you could be in a different department right now of the intelligence community. It's all the same thing. You got to be a little bit circumspect and wonder whether or not what you're hearing and being told is all the truth, right? But always remember this. Years ago, NICAP. Remember NICAP, the history of UFOs? NICAP? NICAP was a UFO organization. Years ago, a Russian operative came into a NICAP office and very clearly stated, we are the Russians, we are the KGB, and we want to know more about UFOs. It came out that way. It wasn't that obvious, but it sort of all came out quickly. Everybody knows the Russians, the Chinese, they're looking at our UFO researchers. They're looking at the aerospace world. So if you're a CIA guy, you're going to be looking at UFO researchers because, like I said, they're the light attracting the fly. And you're going to be looking at that to see if others are looking at them. That doesn't mean that Ron is the keeper of the weird desk. By the way, I'm not going to say yet, but you'll learn about the weird desk in the new documentary. You'll learn about it.
But I mean, and so he's, and I mean, there's some very interesting things about Ron. Obviously, I've looked tried to look into his background over the years.
Maybe he'll come on your show. How's that? Maybe
Yeah,
we'll
no,
find
that
a
would
way to
be
get him on.
great. I mean, I think that it's fascinating. But again,
He might be loosening up a little bit. We hope with
well, I
the
mean,
media.
and again, it's like I would just say, why are you always connected with the same players, the same
Oh, can you please tell
brokers
me what
of
you mean
crap?
more about which players do you mean? Tell me who you
Well, I
mean.
mean, put off, Kid Green. I mean, it's just there's always that,
Wait a minute.
Dan Smith.
There is a reason. I love your question. This nexus of put off, Green, and Ron, and it gets a little deeper, is very much what our show is going to get into. And that nexus is fascinating. And if you understand it from the position I've got as a journalist, it's not going to be hard to it's not going to be hard to get in your system and digest. It's not that complicated. However, let's be clear about this. The star, the we'll just make it simple because history is not important. Psychic warfare, using remote viewing to spy on other countries, Uri Geller's claims of psychic power, never proven in any scientific veracity way. Zero. When Ron came in and saw what was going on with that psychic warfare stuff, that his predecessor, Kit Green, was more or less behind, done. Out. No scientific credibility, gotta go. Watch the Minister of Goats. A good friend of mine actually was one of the executive producers of that movie, Minister of Goats, or was behind it and very much financially. And I think people would really get a kick out of seeing the Minister of Goats. It's very important to see right now because that movie is a parody on put-off's attempts to get the government to think we could create psychic warriors.
Right. And we've got like just a few minutes left of the show, but I wanted to ask you because I
Really?
had
That's 2 hours?
watched.
Oh my God.
I
I
know,
love
and
talking to
it's
you.
like so quick, but
You're the
I,
best. She's the best. She is the best.
I thank you. This has been really fun, but
No, I mean this sincerely. I've never had questions asked about the ufolotics synopsis that we're going to do in our documentary. And by the way, here's spoiler alert. Once we get rid of the bullshit, the second half of the movie documentary is going to be Ron. I hope he lets it happen, taking on the cases that he's argued Bruce Maccabee about, that he's even given me a little argue. It's going to be a major dip and dive into the real UFO evidence that I believe is worthy of government investigations.
absolutely. And I've got to ask you because we've got such a few moments left for the show, but I was watching your interview with Sean Stone, and I had mentioned this to you last night. I was messaging you, and Sean Stone is Oliver Stone's son,
Yeah.
and the promoter of the JFK conspiracy theory and the deep state and all of these things. And I was just, I think, kind of blown away by Sean.
In
I
what
had,
way? What got you? What was the thing that got
you know
you?
what, I did not have a clue that he was so delusional. I mean, I'm sorry. I would love to have him on my show. Sure, he won't come on now, but just this promotion of the New World Order, the promotion of and the vilification of liberals and all of these
I was
things that were
surprised.
just
I was.
what
Well, he's a very nice guy. I will
I'm
say that.
sure.
I enjoy our little mini friendship that we have. The fact that his father, I believe, it may not be the right story, but what he brought JFK under the microscope, the way he did that beyond Geraldo Rivera, who also was very big in this, by the way. Geraldo was the one who got the Zabruta film under the microscope in America. And in my view, his father put the conspiracy in some kind of an analytical form that we could start to see the New Orleans connection in a different light. Having said that, I loved Sean's interest in what's on the moon. I love Sean. I wish he was talking to his father more about what may be on the moon. I just watched 2001 Space Odyssey on a big screen recently. People need to watch 2001 Space Odyssey on a big screen at their home one day and really see it, because these are the ideas that Sean and I were talking about. I don't know about what he was on my show called Conspiracy Truth Finders. I don't know where he was going with that, Eric. I really don't. That's not the Sean subject matter. that I talked to Sean about mostly. It was the, don't forget, it was the election. It was the, January, didn't even happen yet. It's sort of like, I forgot what it was actually. Was it, oh yeah, it was the election denying and all that Sean was done. You know what? It is what it is.
And no, I mean, I was just like, I was just kind of watching, your interaction, and I thought you had some great questions for him. I was very surprised to hear some of the things that he said, because it was like, wow. I mean, I'm not sure if he, has got, stock in QAnon, or
That's what it sounded like. He was giving QAnon like a thumbs, and a
I
little
mean,
bit.
in the New World Order, I've got to ask him, in the New World Order, what do you make of that?
Funny you should mention. All right, so because I think we all promote a little bit, right? So I would like to get your reaction. I have two teenage boys. Like I said, one's a little older, senior in college. One's just entering college, 18. And they're, for years, their friends have been all over the Illuminati. When I came up in this business, it was the New World Order. You didn't hear the word Illuminati mentioned that much. Now you've got Jay-Z and Beyonce with all kinds of demonic pictograms and shapes of they appear to be symbols of some demonic and Masonic and whatever. And the question is, why are we seeing this Illuminati? Remember the Eyes Wide Shut movie with Stanley Kubrick?
Mm-hmm.
So my own boys have been asking me for years, why don't you look into, it really is the same thing, the New World Order and the Illuminati and the Bilderbergers and how, the guy you hate, Alex Jones, going into like Bohemian Grove and seeing the big owl and some kind of effigy of human sacrifice.
Uh-huh.
And our leaders have gone to this. It is weird. And someone needs to look into what I believe to be the New World Order or Illuminati's involvement in Hollywood. That they needs to be looked into.
But, I mean, like going to, San Francisco, and going, into the Bohemian Grove, and
Have you been there?
promoting. Pardon?
Have you been there?
I know people that have, but I definitely have not gone in and created a video that is. I mean, the bottom line is, Alex Jones full of crap.
Well,
Alex Jones has lied about so many things.
let's
That
get
how
away
the
from
hell
Randy.
could anybody even say that he's, that he's going in there and seeing these things, and they're actually factual? I think everybody knows anything he says is garbage.
I'll say for the record, as before we close out tonight, there's no doubt when he got in there and got video of the owl and what was going on there, give him a little credit. This Sandy Hook thing is so unconscionable, is so depraved. Trying to call a Sandy Hook thing a false flag. 26, and mostly little boys, little children, little girls being killed and terribly shot to death, and awful. If you knew the details of that, you would know Alex Jones deserves everything he gets right now. However, there is no doubt something going on. I'll leave you with this last thought, and I'm not picking on Jay-Z, but here's what you'll look at if you want to see it. He's on a radio show. I believe it was 106, I believe, here in LA. I'm not quite sure where it was exactly. And you can see the person ask Jay-Z, I like a stream like this a little bit. So Jay-Z, what's going on? Why are you wearing the Aleister Crowley shirts? Why are you wearing like things? Are you in the Illuminati? Are you in it, Jay-Z? Well, that's crazy. That's retarded. He says, what do you mean? She pushes back. Jay-Z, you wear these shirts. You guys are promoting something. What's going on here? And he looks so weird in this. You got to look at this. It's really weird. And then we have Beyonce at the Super Bowl, and we have weird, symbols being shared. And one of my favorite artists recently is Dojo Cat. Just go to the internet and put in Dojo Cat has party celebrating Eyes Wide Shut. Just check it out. It was just a few weeks ago. And I got to tell you, I'm very interested in her as an artist. She's very good. She's a very kind of hip little musician. But something's going on. Something's going on. You got to see it.
And
It's
so you think
hard
the
to
New
believe.
World Order, I mean, do you believe
Kanye West is out there right now saying, and I'm just, with Kanye, I'm reaching out. um, he's saying that we are more or less controlled by some kind of a cabal called New World Order.
Kanye West is a freaking idiot?
You know what? Michael Jackson said the same thing. We all want to say these people are crazy. I know we
Well, no,
do.
I think that Kanye West is a freaking anti-Semitic idiot. I mean,
I'm Jewish. Let me tell you right now, I don't like what I heard. I don't like it from him. I don't like it from other people. But we Jews are a little tough. We've been around for a while. So it's like, come on, you want to call. But what is he
no,
really saying? If you track back the Illuminati connections, it's the
no,
Rothschild family. Oh,
no.
come
You know what?
on.
I bet if I could find somebody from the Anti-Defamation League to come on my show, I'm sure
So
they.
let me ask you one question. What did Kanye say that was, I'm really trying to find it because my kid is very much feels like you. He's so mad now about Kanye. What, I missed this. I'm busy working on new projects. What did he say exactly about
Oh,
Jews? Do we know?
it's there. There have been so many things. I'm
Give
sure I
me
could
like
go
one
on
little
here and
example, like the worst example you heard.
let's
I'm
see.
not defending him. I just want to know, like, because I think I know where he's going with this, which is the Rothschild family. I believe that, but I don't know. We'll see. But I do believe if you read a paper that was put out about the Illuminati that allegedly was done for the CIA, there are these families, these 13 families. And there's a scene in the movie Eyes Wide Shut where he's driving Tom Cruise to that alleged orgy, whatever it was, and you see Glen Cove Road, exit blank. That's 5 minutes from where I grew up in New York. The Whitney estate is right there. One of the alleged families of the Whitney estate. Now, I used to live right near there. I have a bigger problem with this than because I know Stanley's work. He'll research a scene like for months. Why did he have Tom Cruise go on the Long Island Expressway on exit 39? Why would he be there? He is an amazing filmmaker. God bless his soul. There's something about Stanley that people don't know. He literally had a screening of Eyes Wide Shut. People were there. They saw what went on. Apparently, and no one's been able to break the story yet properly, but I hope I can get into it with his wife if she'll let me. He was unhappy with what they said to him. He allegedly, and I don't know if this is true or not because I don't like to put I never mention the word allegedly, but there's one thing that seems to be true. He died before the final cut could make the screens, and there seems to be a lack of that subject matter in the movie. It's a big part of the movie, but it's like not in there that much. You have to believe he shot a lot more. You can imagine. So where is that? So there are people that claim they made him take out like 35 minutes of it, and then he dies mysteriously. And by the way, I'm not saying he died mysteriously like you couldn't die the way they said, but the timing of it is so bizarre. He seemed to be fairly healthy, right? Do you know anything about it?
I mean, the Stanley Kubrick thing, I think there are a lot of conspiracy theories about that and him not finishing the film. But I want to go back to really quickly Kanye West or Ye, whatever his name is today. But if you do go to the Anti-Defamation League, ADL.org, you can see all of his quotes and why people would be raising an alarm to his anti-Semitic comments, really damning and dangerous comments, which we don't need to have specifically in this climate and specifically in the UFO community or world where we already have a propensity to kind of glom onto things that are not in our best interests. So that's my own opinion.
The only thing I was ever saying about it, so people are clear at home, whoever's listening and watching, I say there is a mystery about a global cabal being in control of our world to a certain degree, whether you call it New World Order or anything else. But just like any journalist or any story, you got to get into it. Now, if you're afraid of getting killed because you might look into something you shouldn't look into, well, that's an issue. I think every journalist has to think about what they're getting into. But these are the people with enough money. I mean, if Kanye really felt there was some sort of, he has hatred toward the Jews because the Jews, us Jews, are, go research it, put out something important, but just say things. That's awful. I don't know what he said exactly, but I have no idea. And I assume he's trying to say that Jews are bad for the world, or we do something bad. And I don't know. I can't imagine. But Hitler didn't get away with it after all in the end. And I don't think he will either. But, we'll see.
Well, let's hope not, because I think unfortunately in the world of ufology that we've allowed a lot of people with some pretty negative voices to commandeer the subject, and
Oh, yeah. Back to that.
as a
Sure.
result, it's I mean, and the tall Nordics, the blonde, benevolent, space brothers that are here. I mean, there's a very heavy theme of racism and misogyny in the UFO subject. There always has been, and I think that's very important. If we're looking for love and light, we're looking for the truth, then we have to be able to look at the history of the subject and say, wait a minute, maybe the New World Order isn't exactly what we're saying it is. Maybe the people that are calling pedophiles and all these people out are actually the people that are defending them, as we've seen in the UFO community time and time again. We're going to turn around and support and bring people to conferences who are convicted pedophiles. We're going to, be bringing in people who have, done some pretty dastardly things, but we're the love and light community, and so that's okay. So I'm just saying that I think that we need to turn the light back on to, the UFO community, to some of these communities who are talking about the New World Order, because I think they might perhaps be behind some of that. So
that was my point. The only thing I was saying about whether it be the Mandela effect or CERN or covering up UFOs or trying to throw some really weird monkey wrenches into UFO history, like this whole TTSA thing. Mellon's family, one of the richest families in the country. I'm a little suspicious about this right now, to be quite honest with you. I'm wondering why a Mellon's involved, but we're going to get into all that. And so the reality is, whether it's New World Order, Illuminati, Hollywood being usurped in some way by this kind of power base, I'll leave you with a thought. Bill Clinton, who, by the way, Ron did give a briefing to the Clinton administration about UFOs, or arranged for it to happen. They asked him for it. There's a lot of truth to what Bill Clinton said one day, or there's truth to what that exists. Bill Clinton was asked more or less the right question. He said, no, he thought there could well be a government above the government. Keep that in mind. Why Bill would have allowed that to come out? And people could say Bill Clinton was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Look, Donald Trump was friendly. Donald Trump was so friendly with Gazelle. How's she pronounce the name? His girlfriend, Jeffrey Weinstein. Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend was very close to Trump, Trump's wife, Jeffrey. It's almost like people want to forget that Donald Trump was very close to this guy and even defended the woman. So what's going on there? And this whole QAnon thing. QAnon takes some of the Illuminati, New World Order, terrible ideas about sacrificing children for their adrenochrome. This is nutty world. But let me ask you a question. In our world doing investigation to UFOs, we have the ability to turn those skills into other mysteries that are also hard to cover for usual journalists. So we are kind of like the first line of defense, so that the Leslie Keans and the other people that try to infect the New York Times don't do it with other subjects. You imagine what other subjects it could happen now? Look what happened on January 6th. People believe so much, they're willing to go into, try to get into Pelosi's office. And even one woman was so enraged, she's willing to put herself in harm's way and get shot to death at the doorway of the major room that all the people are meeting in. So I got to be honest with you, that scared the hell out of me. That somebody was so convinced that the QAnon ideas were real that they're willing to die for it. Crazy.
It's an interesting thing, and it's again, we've been like all over the gamut tonight, and I
I
appreciate.
know, I love that.
But I mean, I appreciate you talking about Firmage and talking about Skinwalker Ranch and talking about some of these alien autopsy and
Can
all of
we?
these things.
I'm going to say that
So,
I'm going to say it to you, Erica, tonight. Of all the people that I would bring on one of my shows, that would bring a level of intelligence to this that you bring to UFOs, to maybe some other tangential subjects that are roughly connected, loosely connected, I would love to have you on. So I really think you have a great kind of overall perspective that brings a lot of light to the UFO field. And I think it's great for UFO interested people to have you involved. I've been looking at your work for a few years now, and I think it's great.
thank you,
Good job.
thank you. I appreciate that because I do, I mean, I care about this. Obviously, if I didn't, I wouldn't be here doing this all the time and subjecting myself to some of the things that I have subjected myself to. I really actually do love this subject, so thank you very much, and I will keep
My
track of
pleasure.
you and when everything comes out, just let me know.
So can I ask right now? We are doing this with 1091 Media. They're the one company that's putting out a lot of things, but they've come to me and said, more or less, we know your work, your quality of your work on network television. We want to get into that level of quality now. So I want to announce it. It's a wonderful thing. I think we're going to do some great things together. The first one's going to be the Mandela effect. And I would love to come back on and talk to you guys about that, because it's not off the UFO prism. It's somewhere on one of those bands of ripple effect. And I think we should talk more about it on your show.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend and happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Erica. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
you guys take care, and thank you everyone for supporting UFO Classified. I appreciate you, and I'm sorry I wasn't here last weekend, but I was having so much fun on a well-deserved vacation with my friend, and I can't wait to show footage from that. That's going to be really fun. Thank you to all of the people that support my show on Patreon. I want to make sure that each and every one of you know about my nonprofit that I started with Jack Brewer and Barry Greenwood, expandingfrontiersresearch.org. You can go there and check it out. We're really doing some great things, and I am very confident that we are going to push things forward in a positive way, exposing things that should have been exposed many, many years ago. Jack Brewer has been exceptional at doing FOIA requests. We'll be doing many pages about this FOIA requests, along with interviews. And I want to just say hello to Helga over in Norway. I have a wonderful interviews from the time I was over in Hessdalen that I will be putting on our website. So there's so many wonderful things. There are also, in that breath, I want to say that there are lots of things that we need to expose to make this a better, more ethical place for all of us and to move research forward. So thank you very much. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I will catch you next week.